if you are watching college football, you're probably watching the Miami Ohio State game. If you are, welcome. If not, if you're watching the Ryan Seacrest it's the Dick Clark Rocking New Year's Eve presented by Ryan Seacrest, where now he's plugging in the fact that he is a vulture in the sense that he's taken over dying properties. He took over, first and foremost, he took over Dick Clark, rest in peace. Pat Sajak's still alive, but he took over the Wheel of Fortune and he integrated himself into that too. So Ryan Seacrest is a hustler. You know what? I give him nothing but props for scooping in all those properties. But welcome to the Tigers MLB report. Our top list, as we're opportunists. But if you're looking for an alternative, because also right now, let's be honest, Chris, this isn't a slow off season. Tigers have done pretty much everything. Everybody's kind of wrapped it up for the year. Wherever you are doing, hopefully everybody's having a safe holiday. But yeah, this is the time of year where it's December is a dead zone for baseball.
Yeah, there's been very little that happened. I think I saw that somebody posted that the only signing that we've seen on New Year's Eve over the last couple of years was Yusei Kikuchi. So not expecting anything tonight. And yeah, it's there was a flurry of movement there around the winter meetings, and we haven't seen a whole lot since. And there are a lot of big names still out there, and you don't see the Tigers connected with any of them, of course. Even Alex Bregman, they're supposedly not interested or not pursuing at the moment. But so yeah, it's a slow time of the year. I'm sure a lot of people are out partying or whatever. So good to them. Happy New Year to everybody. It's been an interesting year for both of us and for everybody listening, I'm sure. We've got a lot to be thankful for this year for sure. This time last year I did not have a job. You had a different job.
Yeah,
I think. And that's taken away both of our time a little bit from the minor league site. As much as we'd like to, do what we can. Sometimes the new jobs take precedence, but we've had a lot of help from guys like Joe and Colin and Jerry who've really filled in for us, and we're grateful for them. And Emily during the season, right? Emily was doing West Michigan reports every week, so good for that. And and we're ready to break in 2026 with a new list of top prospects.
Yes, and also I give props out to Ashley too. She gave us some really good intel.
Ashley, yes.
Yeah, Ashley gets some really good scouting reports. And you're right. Yeah, it's now I'm in my 90 days of my new job, so I'm able to be a little more back on that. And my new job knows, what I like about my new job is the ability to still do this, and they're cool with it because it's not taken away from anything I do for my job. So it'll be interesting this summer because there's going to be some graduations I got to consider, and not only for prospects but for my job. We part of it's with high school, so that'll be interesting. Yeah, and I know you're going to be going to Houston in February, right?
Yeah, first week in February I'll be in Houston. See what that's all about. But other than that, I don't know. Yeah, it'd be nice to get down to spring training for sure.
Yeah, which reminds me, we'll probably get a GoFundMe going again if we can get $2,500 to $3,000 for spring training. That can make it happen. I'm not going to drive the spring training instead of flying because it's just a lot easier. I can get a rental car. But yeah, basically, if we can get that kind of amount, they'll be good. And then that also will probably help get a new board at some point too. Because
nice.
Yeah. So, but anywho, yeah, hopefully everybody had a good holiday, however you celebrate your holiday. And yeah, please stay safe out there. The roads were, I don't know about out your way, but it was down here. It was pretty bad.
It's crazy snowy. It was, it's been a wild last, 72 hours, right? Where it was 50 degrees and then tons of rain and then it got super cold and then all the snow came. So yeah, I know there's been a lot of sirens out here, and we're not in the city by any means, but there's still a lot of fires and a lot of people slipping and falling and stuff. So yeah, if you could stay inside, I would do so. But got to do what you got to do. It's New Year's. Got to have one last night of debauchery and hedonism, heading over to Plato's retreat, and then become good for January.
Yeah, no, and there is a lot to address with that too. As far as just be able to just the amount of I guess the salt trucks that are out there and everything too. At least that's been out there, and they were doing that during the rain and all that. But anyway, enough about those shenanigans. Let's talk some baseball. And you were mentioning the Scott Harris kind of whether the Tigers' lack of movement, if you will, the Bregman interest in, but Griff had a couple questions. He had one about the DSL guys that come over stateside, which we'll address here in a second on Twitter. But this question was, I'm confused why it doesn't seem like the Tigers have shown interest in Tayutsu Imai, I believe it is his name. Didn't Harris want to insert themselves in the Japanese market? With how much pitching they're going to lose soon, seems like it makes sense. And here's the thing, Griff, that I'm interested in your take on this too, Chris, because the White Sox went and signed that slugger from Japan. I guess they've been showing interest. Yeah, Origami. I guess they're showing another interest in another Japanese player. And keep in mind that Chicago, as far as markets go for Japan, the White Sox have not really invested in terms of big free agents. We didn't see until, I believe it was last year or the year before, the Andrew Benintendi deal, which was their first. I think that was the largest contract they've ever had on free agency. And all of a sudden now they're dipping into a market that usually is West Coast and New York based, right? I mean, when it comes to Japanese play, I mean, of course, I know the Cubs have signed a couple players as well. And the Cubs are that's the other team in the Midwest. But the White Sox, that seems that is a very new arena for them.
Yeah, I think part of it is, Chicago is certainly a large metropolitan or cosmopolitan city, right? Like I'm sure there's plenty of Korean and Japanese people in Chicago that makes that an interesting place to sign. But also, I think it's kind of the unique nature of Murakami. I've only been linked to the other third baseman, Akamoto, I forget his name. But Murakami is a very high risk, high reward batter, just given his strikeout rates and swing and miss rates in Korea. He's got crazy power, but I've seen people say the 99th percentile outcome there is Kyle Schwarber, which would be amazing. But the 90th percentile outcome is Joey Gallo, which is about as, bad of a contact hitter as you can be and still be successful. So we'll see. Sometimes guys completely, overdo their expectations and come here and adjust and perform really well. And sometimes they completely wash out. So I'm a little bit skeptical of him, but it is cool for the White Sox to dip into that market. As for the Tigers, we haven't heard them linked to Imai, but you don't ever hear them linked to anybody until they sign. I guess we heard some rumblings about Kenley Jansen even before it happened, and I never thought that they would sign him just because he didn't seem like a Scott Harris, AJ Hinch type of reliever. But they ultimately went with a guy who's got a ton of experience and World Series rings and tons of saves, and it's not a bad move. But I don't expect them to sign Imai, but who knows? They may pop up there at the end. I think he has to sign in the next 24 hours.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen too is that I know their scouting on the Pacific Rim has increased. I mean, as you recall, we were hearing that they were having guys out there for some of the baseball tournaments out there. I think was when they signed Duque from wasn't that in a tournament out in that Japan? Wasn't it Korea?
Hernandez? Did he defect from a tournament in Japan?
Or something? Oh no, it was I think they were. I can't remember. Someone was telling us that they were having scouts out at various tournaments throughout Korea and Japan. So I think the Tigers are out there. I don't think they make it known what they're doing. And I thought, Hao Lee was the start of it. They signed a reliever that from Toledo that was from the Padres that they ended up not bringing back. I'm drawing a blank on his name. Do you remember in the middle of the year they signed that guy from former Padres reliever that had bad control issues?
Oh boy, no, I don't.
Yeah, I'll pull up the name here in a second. Mm-hmm. But they had, as far as that goes, the Tigers haven't really dipped their whole entire toe into that, and they haven't. But I'm trying to think of the guy's name now. Now it's going to bother me. I'm going to have
who signed him? The Tigers did.
The Tigers signed this guy. He was signed to Toledo. He was just basically the Tigers were just putting any single arm they could into their roster because they were running out of arms down there.
Oh, Wusako.
Yeah, Wusako. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. They go for arms. We've seen them do that kind of already this offseason too.
The World Baseball Classic. Okay, that's what it was. I thought, but there was another tournament. They signed another guy from there was another tournament they signed another minor league player from. I just can't remember what it was.
Were you talking about the Tigers?
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, there's the Duque Bear. That's the one that
the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't know. I have to look up.
Yeah.
But I don't know. They didn't come up and help that much. But we've seen them during the middle of the year, they'll go out and get somebody who can be effective. Richard Guash was not on the roster to start the year last year. They picked him up in the middle of the year, didn't they?
Yeah, he was in the Mexican League. Wu Sako. Thank you. Wu Sako was the gentleman from Korea. So again, is it a full on dip into it? We'll see what happens. But I mean, they used 54 pitchers in Toledo. So if that's any indication of the things of what was going on down there. But yeah, I mean, was it Urquidy he wasn't pitching as of yet, but I mean, he was the guy that they picked up from the scrap heap. So I think the Tigers are not afraid to explore anything, but at this point, as far as going more in towards the specific rim, we'll see. Yeah. But anywho, I wanted to also address this question about DSL guys that would make the jump into stateside. And DSL Tigers, by the way, were one of, in terms of offensively speaking, one of the most active or better teams last year. We watched a lot of DSL baseball based off that bootleg feed we watched. So
yeah, then it disappeared at the end of the year, and then they came back for a spring, like a fall ball game, and we were watching it. And as soon as we posted about it, it went down.
Yeah,
very clever.
Yeah.
Where is the? I don't see the question about the.
It's on Twitter.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, it's tagged in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we will probably see Chris Rodriguez and Angel De Los Santos move. Those are the two high priority bats there. You could see Steven Madero, the catcher, who I think they like, but he hasn't played a whole lot. There was the other catcher. What's his name? Like Crisantes, not Crisantes.
Are you talking about?
I'm gonna have to look real quick.
Okay, are you talking about not Benitez, right? Or no?
No, it was. Let me see.
Nelson, was it Nelson Marin?
No, he's a catcher. His last Benavides.
Oh, I did say. I totally butchered his name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right. Yeah. I thought you were talking about Benitez. Maybe him, but yes, it's Samuel Sanchez. The Cuban. He's a little bit older. He had a good season. Might see him. We would hope to see Yonan Koba from the pitching side. I think he would benefit from moving up and getting a little bit more dedicated instruction there at throw some more strikes. Anderson Diaz, maybe the lefty. He was kind of wild, but when he was throwing strikes, it looked real good. He kind of reminded me of Paul Wilson. But I also think he got hurt at the end of the year, and I don't know. You can never really tell, what happened there. We might not see him for a while, but they had some interesting. I'm looking at Benavides. Probably not. He got off to a hot start, but hit 244. So
what about Edgar Lugo?
Yeah, I mean he's one of the older guys there, so it's possible that they move him up. He's kind of every now and then they sign. So they signed him at 19 out of the Mexican League. So he might just be kind of roster filler. I don't know. We watch those games, but we're kind of. It's tough to tell like who's really standing out. We just try to find. There are a couple pitchers. I'm like, oh, that looks good. Like Erickson De Los Santos is this big hulking lefty who has the same delivery as Aroldis Chapman and throws like 96, 97, but can't throw any strikes. It doesn't seem to have a breaking ball. But a lot of times these guys just kind of creep up on us, right? Like, I didn't think anything of Wilberth Mendez until we saw him in the Florida Complex League, and he looked interesting. And again, you're dealing with guys who are 17, 18, 19 years old. They can make pretty big leaps in a year or two. Even Moises Rodriguez was not throwing nearly as hard just a year ago. So I don't know. We'll see. It's always fun to keep an eye on these guys, but I don't know. They're about to sign another international class here in 2 weeks. Happens January 15th is when they officially sign, and we already know all the players are going to get. But I don't get too excited about these players anymore until we actually see them play, and even then, until we actually see them play in the complex league, at least, if not low A, because it's just guys have so much talent, but it's really hard to play good baseball. Like Jose De La Cruz had an incredible raw power. He was a pretty good baseball player, but he just could never make enough contact. And he's now, I believe, he's selling horses online. Yeah, I think that's what he's doing. So anyway.
No, and also he was asking about, was it too hard to put the weight into performance because he's older than most competition? It's not even the competition itself. These guys are learning as they're the first time they're actually pitching in some sort of development system. And so I think that in the DSL, one of the things in the DSL is that they're learning they're also basically taking classes to learn English. There's a lot of things at play. And this is sometimes, in some cases, the first time they're seeing 3 square meals a day. And so, there's a lot of different variables that go into that. And also in terms of like as far as competition goes, if a guy's dominating a level, clearly that it could be an indication that they'll go stateside. But there's also legalities too. There could be the case where visa things may be held up and what have you. But in the case of Jose Briseño, for example, Briseño wasn't really nothing that stood out. I mean, he had a pretty good hit. I don't know if he had a power. I mean, he from what I can remember, there was nothing that stood out. It was just a big hulking guy. Then he got stateside in the complex. Then he stood on the complex league. And then we were hearing that in the backfield, he was hitting like just bombs off major league pitchers. And that was like, oh, okay, well, that is attention worthy kind of thing. But the Tigers, as far as like the DSL guys in the last, even Framber Montilla,
he spent 2 years down there.
Yeah. And Montilla, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. I mean, what stood about him was really, to me, was the glove. It wasn't his hitting necessarily. I mean, his glove, he was a quick guy out of the box, but I remember more for his fielding.
Yeah, I mean, with him, it was, I guess, he's relatively young compared to, he played, I think, that whole first season at 17. Sometimes the guys are turning 18 during that season. A lot of it just depends on their maturity level. Like you said, it's not always just about on the baseball field. It's like, do we feel comfortable sending these guys up to the United States? Are they mature enough? And the performance it's just so hard to tell. You watch these DSL games, and there are 50% of these guys, if not more, are never going to play at any higher level, like not even at rookie ball in the States. And there are like 12 wild pitches a game. It's really, you've got like high school level fundamentals with, in a lot of cases, professional tools, right? Like these are good tools, but these guys don't have the fundamentals and they don't necessarily have the reps. That's more about it, really, is, they do a lot of training to get signed, play in showcases and so forth, but they don't necessarily have all the reps. So the numbers are, I don't know. I used to go and look at the minor league numbers in the Dominican and like maybe judge players, but it's hard to do that because you without watching these guys, you really have no idea if they're actually good.
Yeah, and it's first of all, complex league to low A, Griff, the drastic of a jump. It is a big jump because the complex league is essentially you're playing the same 2 to 3 teams a day, and you're not traveling. You're usually staying in the backfields, and it's really it is a glorified scrimmage to me. The complex league is. It's not. I'm sorry. I don't want to say glorified scrimmage. That's too strong a word. It's you're basically you're not really in the process of playing that like that grind of going on the road now the minor leagues, now it's 6 games on the road versus, like, for example, back in the day it was like 3 in one city and you go 3 in another, and then you maybe come home for a series, what have you. So but as far as like Florida State League goes, there's an adjustment too with the different fields and what have you with that. So go ahead.
Well, I think, in Warwick's case, you got like, I think exactly half as many plate appearances in low A, and the strikeout rate skyrocketed and the whiff rate jumped. And part of that, I think, is just, in the complex league, you're seeing maybe one pitcher a game who can actually even throw a secondary for a strike or locate it where he wants to. There's zero command. These are guys figuring things out. They're not, they're not elite pitchers. So if you're with Warwick's case, like he really got torn up by like breaking balls and changeups when he got to low A. So basically, he was probably in the complex league just kind of not taking or just taking those pitches because he didn't need to swing at them because the guys can't locate them, and then sitting on fastballs and hitting them. So it is a big jump in that regard, but you still see the foundation for what makes him an interesting prospect, which is he does have some pretty good bat to ball skills. He's a plus runner. We discovered recently that he was a competitive dancer when he was younger, and there's an amazing picture online that we need to find. If I were his friend, I would be putting it everywhere just to bother him. Let me see it. Do you know where?
Yeah, I have it here. I'll pull it up here in a second. I'm going to find it and pull it up here.
Now, I don't want to make too much fun because being a dancer, I think, is probably a really good learning your body. It's probably a great one-to-one skill to pass over a play in the infield. But no, it's an amazing, like, he must be, I don't know, 11 or 12, and he's doing like full splits in the air and pointing at us. Yes.
Yeah, I found it. I'm gonna share it right now, ladies and gentlemen. This is probably, let's see here. All right, so
look at that. Look at that move. That is impressive. Yeah, like that's a pretty good vertical, and you can imagine him doing that over second base, throwing the ball. So yeah, I mean, it's like I said, he's got the ability to be an up the middle defender, but he's a kid who played at in Chicago, very little experience against advanced competition, and so there probably wasn't a huge difference between what he was seeing in high school and what he saw in the complex league, other than probably a little bit more velocity, right, consistently. But yeah, he's a guy that it's just going to be a slow burn for him. He's going to take a while just because he doesn't have that experience. But like I said, I think that the bat to ball skills there are pretty good, and he should be playing up the middle somewhere, shortstop, second base, center field, maybe down the road.
Yeah, that by the way, he was talking about how the dancing. I thought when you sent me that picture, that was fake because I'm sitting there going, because with the way AI is these days,
yeah,
you never know. But no, and even I think there wasn't there an article talking about how taking those classes helped his baseball, essentially his ability to move in the infield, right?
Yeah, I would think it would be great for your flexibility and just knowing your body. I mean, I think back in the day, was it like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and the Lakers would go to ballet and stuff? Like we've talked about it before about playing multiple sports. You just don't necessarily think of dance as a sport to go along with to baseball, but yeah, if you're going to be a middle infielder, I think that's probably not the worst way to go.
Yeah, and Kareem did yoga, and he had to hide it for a while because it wasn't the cool thing, quote unquote. So,
yeah, and yes, turbo and ozone for breaking. If people are under not catching Daily Ninja Bees, the famous broom dance and so forth, and not to be confused with Breaking 2, the original Electric Boogaloo.
No, the reason why the reason why he didn't go to Erie was kind of had a veteran roster when he came to the playoffs, and you had Peck there, you had at the time, so you're looking at third, you have Peck, McGonigal, and drawing a blank who's playing second after Anderson went up to AAA. I
mean, Anderson and Cruz were there in the first half of the season,
right? And then I was trying to think of who's playing this in the postseason, but
Mendoza they still had playing second a lot, and Peck was playing third, and McGonigal was playing short. Yeah, it was just, and they had Holton at first.
Yeah,
it was just a really veteran, like you said, veteran lineup. A lot of that team is gone now. It's going to be a completely, like, Erie sort of had the same team for the last 3 years.
Yeah,
some guys would come and go, but a lot of that core is gone, and so yeah, I mean, I would expect Pacheco to get up there. I do think the swing and miss is still going to be an issue. Like he has refined his game to where he's going to be able to, do a fair amount of damage still and take walks, which is impressive. But yeah, I mean, swing and miss is just always going to be a big part of his game. So we'll see how well he adjusts. But yeah, we have a big year for him in Erie.
Yeah, and he set the minor league, the West Michigan home run record, which we found out that talking to some of these guys, they're not exactly proud of having these records.
No, they would rather, I think Pacheco would rather have gone up to Erie and hit 100 than broken the home run record in West Michigan. But ultimately it is what it is, and he'll get a chance to get the Erie next year.
And we talked about Pacheco needing to have a big year. Beginning of this year, we talked about Pacheco needing to have a big year, and he lived up to it. Yeah. So, and he took a step forward, and his defensive ability is fine. I mean, he played first base too, so that was good to see his versatility there. And we said at some point too, we'd get to switch it to first base at some point, but I still think he's pretty good at third as well. Yeah. But yeah,
he's perfectly capable of playing third base. He's got a strong arm, and I mean, he's a guy who could move up. I think Pat Caputo thinks he's the most underrated prospect in the system. I think he's doing a lot of scouting the stat line.
Yeah, all day.
And not to say that, like I said, like Pacheco he took a step forward in last year's offseason. He got, he altered his swing a little bit, got a little bit, cleaner in the box, and he needs to do that again. But I'm not going to rule it out. But, he's ranked. Where do we have him ranked?
We have him ranked on our list at
22nd.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, so that's, I think, reasonable. It's a spot where he could move up if he performs, and he could fall down if he doesn't. It's kind of, we had Roberto Campos in a similar place last year, although he did move up to Erie, and he's a little bit younger than Pacheco, I think.
Yeah,
and we had him pretty high, I think, because of the underlying stats. But it was a rough year for him, and when you see, there's a big leap between high A and double A.
Yeah. And again, with the one thing about Pacheco that is certain, that he will be a guy that will continue to, I think his power, if he can hit, if his ISO stays around 190 to 200 in Erie, I think he'll be fine. I think that will translate well in the big leagues. So that's something to look out for. I think and it was something that we discussed about having the ISO in Erie, that double A number is a really good number to, if you haven't watched our Max Clark interview, that's on our YouTube channel, please do so, because that's one of our should be. I'm surprised we have more views. We're trying to get another interview scheduled in January with the Tigers front office person, but see how that goes. The holiday season is what it was. But anywho, without further ado, let's go into the list itself. So we have the list pulled up here on my right here, but we'll just kind of go through. We'll go through it at 10 pack, if you will. So.
Yeah, and same. Just a quick rundown if you're new to this or you haven't heard it before. There's 5 of us: Rogelio, myself, we got Jerry Magnan, we got Colin Arthur, and we've got Joe Rampy, right?
Yep.
Those are 5. We all put together a list of 50 or more prospects. I just went and ranked every prospect or every player in the system I thought was a prospect. So I ended up with 60 something. But we went through and we ended up with basically, to make the list, you had to have 4 votes. Although we have here at the bottom, we have 9 guys who got 3 votes from us each. But if we want to start at the top or start at the bottom, I don't know how you prefer to do it. But
yeah, let's start from the bottom and kind of work our way up to the top a little bit. The top is pretty clear; it's the top 10. But yeah, we want to tell you how the sausage was made a little bit, if you will. And some guys didn't make it on the list. Starting at number 50 to Peyton Graham. And now, again, here's another thing about the rankings: it doesn't mean crap at the end of the day, in a sense that, well, he's ranked on, on MLB Pipeline. MLB, everybody's lines, also, all their different lists are subjective. And it doesn't, Peyton Graham, as much as he took a step forward, I mean, you could look, for example, Chris and I have him ranked in our top, but Joe, Jerry, and Colin didn't even, Colin had him at number 26.
Yeah, I mean, he's 50th here, and I don't even think we would count it because he only got 3 votes. So he's technically not on the list. We just have the highest ranked guys who got 3 votes. So 3 of us think he's a top 35 prospect in the system, but 2 of us didn't rank him, and that's why he's outside of the top 50. So, or in the top 50, and it's a big year for him too. He's another guy who has spent some time. He spent a brief time in Erie, and he'll be back there next year, I think.
Yeah, and then you have like River Hamilton, who we have on our top. Like I said, River Hamilton falls in the same category. Michael Massey, who still is yet to pitch, that's also a pause for concern. So he's going to stay on his lower half until people see him more. Preston Howard, this one, out of all the people we have on this part of the 50 through 40, this kind of surprised me because I thought he would be a little higher based off that. Correct me if I'm wrong. He was going to reliever. He was pitching as a starter for West Michigan towards the end of the year, right? Second half of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, he started as a reliever and then got moved into the rotation, and I think that was kind of just out of necessity. He did fairly well, but you saw toward the end of the year that he's a college guy, so he's got pretty decent command. His only average to above average pitch is probably his slider, right? His fastball is like 93, 95. It's fine, and he had a changeup, but he pitched well. He was doing the job for West Michigan. I do still think that he's probably a reliever, and that's why I had him ranked relatively low. Just that ultimately when you're a reliever with kind of one above average pitch, it's a tough road to make it to the big leagues. But he performed well, and I thought that he was worthy of keeping an eye on, right? Like if he can improve. It was his first year, and he was pretty solid.
Yeah, and he's a guy who I think that his control was really advanced for the level too.
And his sister is a famous actress, which is always fun to mention.
And I don't remember where she's an actress at. That's the only thing.
She's on. There's a Netflix show, something Georgia. I don't know.
Okay. I was going to remember the show. Every time you mention her as a
Ginny in Georgia. Okay. Ginny in Georgia is a show. Brianne Howie, she is Georgia, the titular Georgia in that show.
Ah, okay. Swear I'm like. So then the rest of the list goes Sanchez, who kind of had a setback. It was the guy velocity-wise, but he fell back on our list. Paul Wilson, again, I had him drop because, again, lack of his injuries. Jesus Pinto, just a little more sample size. Gabriel Reyes dropped from our. I mean, he was a guy who was in our top 25 last year. Now he's back down. Mm-hmm. Same thing with so Reyes and Castillo. Interesting enough. Well, Shufflebomb too. But let's be honest here; these three right here were on top 20, top 30, and they've fallen back pretty hard.
Yeah, and when you look at it like this, it is always a little bit odd. Like Shufflebomb barely pitched. Reyes at least pitched and is a level higher, but he wasn't as highly touted coming into it. He kind of came from out of nowhere last year in 2024. And Shufflebomb is a guy who's a second round pick who just we had heard he was barely touching the mid 80s and was having trouble throwing strikes. So, but you lean into the kind of the draft pedigree there, and you see that we had him lower and Joe had him higher. I think still believing in the draft stuff, and it's just the way it is. We're in the bottom 50 here. It's kind of like we throw these guys in the end because their names worth keeping an eye on, basically.
Yeah, and Moises Rodriguez is a guy who we saw that he got called up to Erie, and he was in that game where, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris.
He got called to West Michigan, not Erie.
I'm sorry, West Michigan. Was it the game in the rain where he was struggling with his command?
I don't remember which game. It was in one of the championship games, like in the playoff games. Yeah. He came in and couldn't throw strikes, and they had to bring in Marco Jimenez to kind of bail him out, I think. Or maybe it was I'm forgetting the name of the guy who throws a ton of curveball. Nobody could hit him. But
yeah, that's where because I was going to remember I got my postseason teams all mixed up in there. But yeah, I know he struggled a little bit. He's got the velocity, don't get me wrong. It was like 98, 97 pretty consistently, but it was just a matter of control. Yeah. And then Zach Swanson now starts off for 39 through 30 portion of the list.
Yeah, and he's an interesting one for me because, I had Paul Wilson ahead of him because we've actually seen Paul Wilson pitch. We have not seen Swanson. Swanson was a 9th rounder in 2024 and then had Tommy John surgery, so he hasn't thrown a professional pitch yet. But when we saw him, in the minors, he looked like a nice fastball and a really nice, high spin 2,800, 2,900 slider. So, if he comes back and is throwing well, then he's a guy who can move up pretty easily. But I haven't seen a pitch yet.
And Jack Diaz also comes into that kind of same thing. We haven't seen him enough, and we didn't really, I want to say didn't care for him per se. But the reason why we like guys like Angel De Los Santos, at least, so you can, again, seeing him more often. But this is a part like Diaz. And let's get back to Diaz for a quick second. Mm-hmm. There was a lot of hype to him when he got drafted, and then he has just not been able to stay healthy at all.
Well, I mean, he pitched a fair amount last year. It was an interesting story. I mean, that's kind of the Tigers have over the last few years under Mark Connor and Scott Harris. They've really kind of ramped up the number of guys they're signing from out of nowhere. Jank Diaz was a he's a kid from the Dominican Republic, I think, but was living in Pennsylvania and pitching for some, in random high schools. And they saw him, I want to say, I think they'd seen him before that, but then he performed in the Major League Draft League. Just an interesting story. A guy whose fastball has been up to 95, 96, has shown a curveball and a changeup. But in pro ball, it was really more like 92, 93. And you still see flashes of the changeup and the breaking ball, but and he's a big, strong young kid. Kind of looks like a future reliever, but the results weren't necessarily there. But yeah, he threw 64 innings last year, so up from 14. He was hurt in 2024, which is an issue. But yeah, 64 innings last year, strikeout rate 8 per 9, walks a little high, but one of those arms that you like to have in the system that could pop in a good way, not in a bad way, like all the arms popped last year.
I felt like maybe Diaz was he just hurt? He was hurt though, right? I mean, at some point, like I felt like those 64 innings were sparsely spread out a little bit. I just didn't remember him pitching a lot.
Well, I mean, he was in the complex league for most of the time, and then came up to Lakeland in the final month of the year. I think he made a handful of starts for them there. He may have been banged up a little bit, but he actually, increased his innings by 50 from the year before. So
okay. Now Jack Penny's high on, Jerry's really high on Jack Penny, and Penny last year was a guy who I personally. I was kind of, he got sent over the AFL. I don't know, Chris, like as far as the Tigers have a couple guys like this where they have guys who have good walk rates. But as far as good WRC numbers at West Michigan, he was a pretty valuable part of that West Michigan roster the second half of the season. So I don't know. I'd like to see a little bit more of it before I kind of continue to put him up on the list. But Jack Penny, Jerry has him really high, and I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something there.
No, I mean, so he's one of those guys that you like the more you watch him. At the very beginning of last year, I was talking about how he looked like a really great defender at second base, and I remember telling you that. And then the next game, he made like 2 errors on the first 2 balls that he saw. I'm like, well. But by the end of the year, talking to the West Michigan guys, they were like, they wanted him playing shortstop. They thought he was their most sure-handed defender in the infield. And he really is. He puts together great plate appearances. He walks a ton. That leads to some elevated strikeouts too. And he can hit the ball pretty hard. He just hasn't really. There's a little bit of like the same feeling that I had with John Peck last year, where it was like the tools are there. He just needs to put them into play more. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, you're talking about probably at best a left-handed utility guy on the infield whose main skill is probably getting on base, which is not ideal. But I think there's a little bit more ceiling there. I don't think that there's, I don't look at him as a future big league regular by any means.
Yeah, and the glove wise, it was fine. I thought, offensively speaking, he was just able to be more. I thought I'd expect a little more power out of it, and so maybe that will happen this year. Deadly Ninja Bees said, "Do we expect the front office to continue drafting high school pitchers?" I think they're going to draft guys that fit what they're looking for, whether they're in college or not. But I think there's going to be the obscure. They're like the Tigers right now are like that indie band. They're going for the obscure and things you never heard of and being the hipsters. They're being hipsters in the sense of like some of these pitchers. Like, for example, one guy that comes up at number 29, Kale Westwiski, wasn't on anybody's list. I mean, some of these guys that they drafted last year, I remember baseball during the draft, the Jonathan Mayo and Jim Callis were like, who? Like they were.
He was the first name where they were like, nobody had anything on him. And they had him, I want to say they had him as an outfielder first. But yeah, to the point, I do think that, the Tigers like to kind of game the draft, as it were, and use, save money here, spend it there. And it's just easiest to spend extra money on high school pitchers. It's just that they are more likely to sign at pro contracts. And I think for the most part, it is a better idea for those pitchers to get into pro ball. Because if you go to college, and especially if you're going to a big program and you're struggling to throw strikes, they won't pitch you. And you'll just, they'll might throw you on like a Tuesday or Wednesday night out of the bullpen, but you're not going to get the innings you need to work on your control or your command or your secondary pitches. So I do think it's a good idea for them to sign. It's just it has not worked out for the Tigers yet because all these guys keep getting hurt or have regressing for some reason. But I do expect them to continue spending on those guys. They have, they've targeted a couple bats like with the extra money. It's just harder to get those guys to sign. Warwick was one of them. They gave him an extra $100,000 to sign. And who was it last year? Meridian LeFew.
Yeah.
I don't know if they gave him any extra money at all. So they're pounding the pavement and finding these guys, but it's easier to just spend that money on pitchers and get them into your development program and hope you can turn them into something. The development program just hasn't quite done that yet.
Development wise, too. Speaking of development a little bit, Garrett Burhan, who I still think has one of the better sliders in the system, falls back on our rankings a little bit. I know you and I kind of differ on how we have him ranked. Jerry's a little high on him, and he's a guy who led Erie quietly in innings last year. He was just a guy who was consistently out there for the Seawolves, where the Seawolves had the rotation really was kind of a hodgepodge of guys. It wasn't as steadfast as it was in the championship 2024 team, but in this, you have Nick Dumasel, who I know Jerry's high on. I like to see a little more of a sample size. And I know Baseball America, I know when we talked to JJ Cooper, they were really high on him as well. And maybe and this is where, to answer your question, Griff, I think Dumasel is going to be a guy who I think is going to make a big leap into like the teens a little bit. I think that the potential he shows there, I think he's a guy that could probably jump up a couple lists. And same thing with Johan Simone, who they just picked up from Toronto. He's a guy with the power lefty who's got some more velocity than Gabriel Reyes does. And I think he's also going to be a guy that can sneak in the 20s, possibly teens. I originally had him in the teens, but then I thought about it. I was like, well, level of competition, I think you still have to see how he does there. But those two names right there, kind of back to back, I think could work in that department. But I don't know, Chris Dumasel. I know Baseball America really liked his hitting and power tool, correct?
Yeah, well, I mean, he is tooled up. He played center field last year. It looks like he could do that at least through the low minors and maybe pinch in. He's a big kid with a good athlete and a strong arm, and he can run a little bit. My issue with him watching him play was just his swing. His swing is geared for ground ball contact and ground balls to the opposite field. So he did not, despite being a big, strong kid, I don't know if he had any. I know he didn't hit any home runs. I'm trying to think how many extra base hits he had. I'm looking at 5 doubles. And I would bet that almost all of those were probably ground balls down the first base line. So it's sort of reminiscent of Justice Bigbie and Max Anderson, where it's just kind of a odd front foot swing where he's closed off in the front, and a lot of it, like I said, it's opposite field contact. If you can work on that a little bit, you can unlock his power, and then you have a really kind of potentially dynamic outfielder. I would probably put a 4th outfielder ceiling on him right now, but I don't know. I mean, as much as I'd like to believe that the Tigers got a huge steal in the 8th round and a college guy, I think there's probably a reason he lasted that long. And and I think it's the swing. I think that some teams are a little bit concerned that he won't be able to, he's not flexible enough to kind of manipulate the barrel and learn to turn on balls better. But we'll see. I mean, guys can make pretty drastic changes over the season. I think for Griff's question, for me, if there's somebody lower on the list that might rocket up the list, it's probably one of the 2 high school picks that we actually don't have in our top 50. That I think you see with us, we tend to be pretty conservative with recent draft picks. You see Grayson Grinzel is there, but I'm talking about Ryan Hall and River Hamilton. Hall was their 5th rounder, I think, and Hamilton was their 9th rounder, 11th rounder last year. Both got, I think, around $500,000, maybe more, and both really interesting high school arms. And again, like, these have not worked out for the Tigers, but if somebody were to hit, I think it would be someone like that, where they just – I watched Hamilton pitch in what was it? I mean, we have a video of him. It was in the one of the Perfect Game showcases, I think, and it was really good looking to me, like really loose, mid-90s fastball, a good breaking ball. Looked like he's got
easy
yeah,
ball. Yeah,
and the fastball had ride to it, and it looked like he had a chance to gain a lot of weight and probably throw harder. But then I believe he was hurt as a senior, so I think that's how they signed him. So I don't know. And then Ryan Hall, We have one clip of him making an absolutely insane defensive play as a pitcher, like jumping up in the air and falling down on his back and then throwing to first. He's supposedly a really good athlete. I think he was a football player, has a good breaking ball. So those two guys would be my guess, but who knows? They have to go out and pitch, right?
Yeah, and all you can do is just get those reps and the finish off the top 30. Callahan, Cruz, and Tyler Mattson's back on the list. He was off our list for a minute. And for the record, Cruz, okay, I know that I don't have a ranking for him, but to me, he's almost graduated at this point. And I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
I
think
go ahead, Chris.
That might just be an oversight. But yeah, because you've been supportive of Cruz for a long time now.
Yeah,
and he and Callahan I think it's nice to have them next to each other because Callahan is kind of a corner outfield only. You have questions about his hit tool a little bit, but he does have power. He's got speed. He's got a super strong arm. He's a guy who fits best at the corner but can play center. And Cruz is a guy, switch hitter, has some hit tool questions to me still. And maybe that's just because he hit was so bad his first year, but he hit really well last year in the high minors. So I should probably start adjusting my evaluation of him in my head. And then he's got a little bit of pop, a little bit of speed, and most importantly with Cruz, he can play everywhere. He's a legitimate shortstop, legitimate center fielder, probably best at second base, but he can play anywhere you need him. So that's a valuable utility man. That's probably a ceiling, but he's probably close to that ceiling right now.
Yeah, definitely. And the thing too about one thing about Cruz, I want to congratulations to him. We haven't really discussed this too much. About Trey Cruz real quick is about how he's on the 40-man roster. He's definitely earned it, and I think the biggest was his exit velocity too in Toledo is really good. I think it was better than in a smaller sample size than Hayu Lee was. I believe I believe when I did an article about this a couple months ago, the numbers on Trey Cruz are actually really good as far as a AAA debut went. So I think that also played a factor for the Tigers to do that because the pedigree, your family pedigree is important, especially when it comes to make up a player like that. Just seeing, this is the third time I've told the story where I saw his family out there, his mom, his grandmother, his grandfather, who was a Jose, which was a Houston Astro great, and his father, who all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank on.
Jose Cruz.
Yeah, Jose
Cruz Jr.
Jr. Yeah, Jose Cruz Jr., who was the coach at Rice. They're all there taking notes. They're literally every time, like almost synchrony, they're doing it. You can sync up at the same time.
Synchronicity is what you're saying.
Synchronicity. So they're both like all three of them are like this.
Let me see.
Yeah, it was really, really, really weird, but
I'm
nevertheless.
I'm checking on Baseball Savant right now, so I can tell you. Exit velocity.
The numbers will.
Trey Cruz was 90 miles an hour last year, which was 0.2 miles an hour better than Hayu Lee.
Yeah.
And a full mile better than Justin Herman-Malloy. Jace Young was 90.5. Eduardo Valencia, 90.7. Max Anderson, 90.8. Jemai Jones, 91.1. Gage Workman, 91.2. And Brewer Hicklin, 92.1.
92.1. By the way, yeah.
The Hicklin. The great country hits.
Speaking of Workman, by the way, is Workman back on the back with the Tigers, or did he go? Okay, all right, yeah,
he did not get selected in the Rule 5, so he is technically still in the organization.
Okay, so he's back in there. So, as far as like 30 through 20 goes, we can talk about a couple names. We talked about Pacheco already, Dylan Smith, Jude Warwick. We've talked about, but Cobra. I want again, Chris. If Cobra breaks out, you're going to be as Brandon Day was the conductor of the Matt Manning train, you would be the conductor of the Cobra tank. Cobra.
The Cobra underwater watercraft.
Yeah.
The Cobra hovercraft. Yes. No, I mean, it'll be a tough one. For me, it's a lot easier to evaluate pitchers than it is for hitters.
Absolutely.
And I just, was able to watch him pitch, and you see parts of it. You see everything there that could possibly make him an interesting pitcher. He's sitting 93, 95. He's touched 97. Sometimes the fastball has explosive life with like 20 IVB. And then he'll show you a plus changeup and an above average breaking ball. And then he'll also spike the ball in the dirt and throw the ball behind somebody's head. It's a kid who is 19 and a half. So basically, I think probably the same age as River Hamilton, if I'm looking. And I just think the pure stuff and the ability is really interesting, and it's just a matter of can they refine him and get him throwing more consistent strikes, because it's like I said, he's an athletic mover. There's a lot to like there, but so to me, it was just like, well, how does he compare to these other guys? Owen Hall, they're about the same age, and he hasn't been to the level that Owen Hall has, but he's pitched more, and his stuff looked better to me when he pitched. So that's where I do think that it's interesting. He has kind of caught steam, and you see that I actually have him second lowest among our crew in terms of how he's ranked. But he's still. I think he has an interesting arm in top 30, and it will be interesting to see if other people, national sites have picked up on him, because I know that other local people have. But we'll see. Well, thank you, Matt.
Yeah, appreciate that, Matt. Joseph Montavo has kind of struggled a little bit. We saw him, that picture, like I said, of him look like he got assaulted.
I think it was. I mean, he had Tommy John, I think, but also it was probably one of those Gibson Long / Casey Mize situations where he probably had a hip issue too, or a knee issue, and they just decided to do both of them at the same time. So yeah, he was in the elbow brace and a leg brace. He fell out of a tree and got hit by a bus.
Yeah, and
well, yeah, and you touched on Tyler Madison. We had him off the list, and then the Tigers re-signed him. We assumed that they would, but we just wanted to make sure. At least it was reported by Evan Petzold of the Free Press. It has not been reflected in the transactions yet, as far as I know, but we believe he's back. And that's a guy that we've liked for a long time as a potential late inning reliever. If you can just throw a little bit more, a few more strikes, big riding fastball in the mid 90s, downer breaking ball, decent changeup even from an odd arm slot. It's just throwing enough strikes, or enough close to strikes to be a viable reliever.
And I know the other names on this list they're familiar with. We'll get to Ben Jacobs here in a second, but Caleb Lay is a guy, another Northeastern guy. This is a guy who was drafted out of the University of Maine. I'm really intrigued to see him where he's going to start up at next year, whether it's going to be Lakeland or West Michigan or complex ball, because as far as like college arms go, where the Tigers have recently drafted, we haven't seen or we've seen a few arms move up relatively quickly. He's a lefty that he's one to watch. I think he's a guy that, if you look at his numbers in again, Maine, as far as like, it's not like your household program or anything like that, but he did put up the numbers. He did walk quite a bit of people in his summer. I believe he pitched for, I think it was Newport, and the New England Collegiate Baseball League. So, you have to work. I don't know. Like, I'm not really concerned about that. You're learning how to pitch, what have you, but his numbers in terms of like walks dropped as last year from 2023 to 2025. Like, just that. I don't think he pitched in 2024. He was injured, right?
Yeah, Tommy John, I believe. That's why I hesitate. I've done this before, and I shouldn't. But there's a little bit of like the Tarek Skubal story here, where he was a guy that was improving, a lefty, and then got hurt, and this didn't get fully scouted as a junior, right? And then basically had to do his senior season, just a little bit older, but not too bad. And yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what he looks like. And I think he and Ben Jacobs, we wrote that article about the Tigers pitching development issues, and they seem to have known that anyway, because they went really heavy on pitching last year, and a lot of more college arms than usual, but at least earlier than usual. So I do think that the low minors is going to be stocked with college pitchers from last year, and one of these guys you would hope will kind of pop and look like a future rotation member.
Yeah, and you're hoping that happens with him, and we're going to get to Andrew Sears here shortly.
Yeah, well, and I'll circle back to Cale Wiska, because he was a guy that we actually got to see a little bit. So there was some, and he was another one that was like, well, the strikes aren't quite there, but you see why they drafted him immediately. It's a tall and fall, or whatever you call it, like delivery as opposed to the drop and drive. And somebody made a comparison to Matt Manning, and I think it was pretty apt. Like his mechanics look pretty similar to Matt Manning, and you see flashes of two secondaries with him and interesting fastball shape. So like you said, a guy that nobody really heard of. It's a pretty interesting arm that we want to see more of next year. And who knows when we'll see Montalvo. Dylan Smith, we saw a little of last year, got a chance to be a useful bullpen arm, maybe seventh inning type guy. He's got the breaking ball. He's got an interesting split. It's just a matter of throwing more strikes, and he can't stay healthy.
And also, it doesn't help that, development wise, he was like, remember, Chris, he was a guy that wasn't going back to back in games. And I think that hurt his development, as you recall.
Yeah. Well, they had him go back to back immediately in the big leagues, and then he was hurt. It was like, well, all right. And that's the thing. He's been hurt a lot. He's a good athlete with good stuff, and you catch him in the right night, and it's like 97, 98 with that breaking, a pair of really good breaking balls. But he wasn't able to bring that with him every game, and so hopefully another offseason he can and throw more strikes. And like you said, then you got a useful late inning reliever possibly.
And another guy, and this Ben Jacobs, who out of Arizona State, was a guy who transferred from UCLA, so he's already had that big. Pac-12, Big 12, whatever the hell is going on with the conferences these days. Put up some really good impressive numbers, 120 strikeouts and 83 innings pitched in his last year at the Arizona with the Sun Devils. So I'm looking forward also to seeing him pitch, because I think he's a guy that could start. I easily could see him starting at West Michigan and just dominating the levels. We talked about this before, where you don't want to fall in love with a guy like this at high A, because those pitchers tend to dominate. It's what you see in Erie is where it kind of how that translates over into Double A.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how he does, how he looks, because it's a pretty good changeup, I think, is his go-to pitch. So,
and then this part we'll probably breeze through here. The 20 through 10, Kelvin Salcedo comes in pretty high on our list here because of his performance last year. But Owen Hall still. He dropped on. Yeah, Owen Hall took a fall.
It's an interesting. You can see the dynamic there, where you and I have him in the 30s, and everybody else is still believing him as a top 20 pitcher, which is fine. Like he was a second rounder with a big arm, and we saw some clips of him at the pitching WRX place last year, where he was close to 100 and it looked good. But we also got to see him pitch in games, and it did not impress me really. Like his fastball was okay. We get into I think he touched 95, 96 a couple times, but he didn't. He had trouble throwing strikes. It didn't look like he had any kind of consistent secondary pitches that looked any good. And again, it was 9 innings, so you don't want to make too much of that. And maybe you end up being hurt. He had like a fractured growth plate in the shoulder or something like that. So you don't want to make too much of it. But for me, it was like, well, I can't justify ranking him above all these other people based on what I saw. And hopefully, it will. He can come out and prove us wrong, right?
Yeah, and that's all you can ask for. And then Jackson Strong kind of consistently around the same performance a little bit. Jaden Ham dropped a little bit, and that was because of the velocity concerns. And that was after getting health or struggling with some health last year. There was a lot of talk, too, that apparently he could have been moved the trade deadline had it been healthy. But that's rather, alleged. That's more of like in the alleged category. But he gives the Tigers really, as far as like, Salcedo, by the way, is in our top 10. If you look at every other list, Baseball America doesn't have a Tigers pitcher on their top 10. And Ham doesn't come up on any other list that high, I believe.
Yeah, man, it will be interesting to see. There haven't been, I don't know where he is on the pipeline. And Fangraphs hasn't done theirs yet. And I don't know if they've done top 30s yet for baseball. They haven't. It's just the top 10s. But yeah, Jaden Ham, he was a good story in 2024, and he still has the interesting fastball curveball combination. But yeah, the fastball velocity we were hoping it would go up, and it went down even more. And then he was hurt. He'd hurt, I think, his groin or whatever, So it was a tough year for him. And you hope that he can come back, and he's still relatively young for a college pitcher. I think he was 22 all of last year. So not giving up on him yet, but that's pumping the brakes, I think, is the old thing we used to say. Punch and pump it. We were pumping it. Back to Jackson Strong real quick. He got up to double or high A West Michigan later in the year, and there's going to be some swing and miss there and some strikeouts, but he has a really nice mix of hitting the ball hard and hitting it hard to the pole field. So he's probably going to get to most of his power, and he's a plus runner, and he's a good athlete who can play center field. So there's kind of similar to Brett Callahan in the past. But I think there's a little bit more ceiling there for Jackson Strong. So that's how I think he snuck into our top 20. And then you got Valencia. Valencia, one of the great stories in the Tiger system last year. I I don't know if I would have ranked him until the Tigers added him to the 40-man roster. And I'm like, well, all right, let's do this. So here we are. I have him ranked 15th because he just hit last year, and he hit for power, and he didn't swing and miss a ton. He hits the ball on the ground a little bit too much. That makes you worry about, getting to that power in the big leagues. But I'm a big believer in the raw power, and it didn't look like he struggled against any kind of pitching last year. Like, I think he can hit. It's just a matter of how much he's going to get over the fence power.
Yeah, and the biggest thing about him too, we were talking about the exit velocity earlier. He was ranked among the higher ones. But Troy Melton, talking to Troy Melton in the locker room, was like, they were not joking. Like, I thought he was being sarcastic at first, but he was serious. He was like, Eduardo Valencia, best hitting prospect the Tigers have. Everybody loved. Anybody I talked to last year or this year was always talk about how well Valencia worked his ass off. Just talking to Toledo manager Gabe Alvarez, and was talking about how much he worked on losing weight and getting a quicker swing path. And so that's a great story, because he really looked, and as far as like COVID goes, COVID was a guy that affected his development in a sense, because he didn't get that consistent playing time. But yeah, Valencia is a really, really good example of it continues to the example of catchers take time. Catchers just simply take time. You don't give up on catchers yet. You never do, because now his defensive work, I know that he was still working on getting better defensively at first base, but this is a primary reason why guys like Alfonso probably moved on from the organization. When they saw Valencia, it was like, well, crap, what am I going to do with that? His development was really, really key. And then Lucas Elliott, Elliott. Lucas Assault. Jerry is a huge fan of him. And this is another guy too that kind of, I don't want to say slipped on the radar. I was drafted on the 13th round out of Chipola College, which is the same college, correct me if I'm wrong, that Ray Rivera went to. Is that right?
I believe so. It's a pretty big JUCO in Florida.
Yeah. And unlike that, where the Tigers were drafting him, they drafted him because of some exit velocity numbers, allegedly. Lucas came in there and really was a big part of Lakeland's success first half of the season. Was a guy that went in there, gave him, I believe he was more of like, was used as like an opener starter, right? He wasn't a guy that went, correct me, right? Was he?
At the beginning of the year, he was. But by the middle of the season, he was really, I think he went on like an epic, 10 start stretch where he gave up like 3 total runs, something crazy like that. Like, for me, it's just all about the velocity with El Assault. Like, he's got everything else you want. He can really spin the breaking ball. He throws a lot of strikes. He's got feel for like 4 or 5 different pitches. His fastball is just kind of 90-91. And his brother pitches, and he knows how to use it too. He will throw fastballs by hitters at that velocity above the zone. His brother throws like 94-95, and you just hope he can get that, because you saw what happened when he got to high A. He moved up from low A to high A, and I want to say he may have been was he the Florida State League Pitcher of the Year?
I think he was. I believe it was. Yeah.
When he moved up, what happened is his walk rate exploded, and it wasn't like he wasn't suddenly wild. He could not throw pitches by hitters anymore. And so what would happen is they turn in these like 9, 10, 11 pitch at bats, and he'd be throwing it on the edges, and batters would just foul the ball away and eventually walk. And so I just think he just needs a little bit more velocity to keep those hitters off balance. And if he does, then he's got a really nice chance to be a solid rotation piece down the road. It's just needs to get a little bit bigger and stronger. And he has the frame to do that. I think he's like 6'4". So yeah, really exciting. One of the better years that we saw from them last year.
And Max Anderson on this list too, before we move up to the last couple names on this top portion of the 20 through 10 portion. Anderson is also an example of extremes with us. We have him, you and I both have him. You have him at 12, I have him at 11. Joe has him 14. And Jerry, number 26. And then Colin has a number 9. And Anderson is an interesting one. We saw him play some third base in the Arizona Fall League. He's also in an interesting predicament right now where the Tigers have this logjam of infielders for the first time in 35, 40 years. Like let me explain this to you folks. They have interesting infielders where in a sense they could play at the major league level. And whereas before a lot of the guys they brought up weren't major league caliber, Anderson's a guy that you don't know where defensively he's going to be a liability, which is why sometimes he doesn't appear on these lists because could he play second? Sure. Is he a guy that plays second base every day? I don't know. I don't think so. But I mean, he did show last year he was healthy. He was able to answer the bell when the Tigers needed him to, and he did a good job. His numbers he was one of the better hitters in Double A, and he cooled off a little bit. But then again, I think this is all could be speculation on this part that perhaps he was hearing about trade rumors, and that got to him in the second half before he got called up to Toledo, and then he did pretty well in Toledo. It's just a matter of can he hit for enough power to stay at the big league level, and that's where some apprehension comes into that. So I don't know, Chris. As far as Anderson goes, he's a guy that has to. I think. Would you say it's fair that he has to have another prove it year in this year?
Yeah, he's always going to have to prove it because there's no secondary skill there, unfortunately. Now he did walk a bunch in the Arizona Fall League, but I don't think that really tells us much. If he can get his walk rate up to like 8-9% in AAA in the majors, then you got something because he can hit. He can hit the ball. He's got a funky swing. I mentioned it a little bit when we were talking about Dumanel. That's kind of geared towards ground balls and line drives to right field. The Waffle House singles, right, that they talked about nearing. It's always open. That's kind of it, but he's got like a lot of raw power. And every now and then he will just swing and hit what looks like a pop up, and it'll just go out to dead center, like 420 feet. You're like, what in the world? But he does not pull the ball in the air a ton, and he's going to need to really get into enough power to make himself a major leaguer. Like you said, like there's hitting ability there. He's got some defensive utility, right? Like you can put him at third, you can put him at second. I don't think he's going to be good at either one. He might be passable at second, but without speed or defensive value, and probably not a lot of on base value, it's going to be entirely up to hitting and power. And to get to all that, his swing is going to have to make some changes. So it's a tough one. He's always been a really tough evaluation because he performed. And he was awesome in college. He hit like over 400 with power in college, but he's an aggressive guy and he swings a lot. And he's going to have to hit for power to make it in the big leagues.
Yeah.
And we drop down real quick. 15 was Malachi Witherspoon, their second rounder this year.
Yeah.
Is that right? And Griffith said, Jerry does not like Witherspoon. Jerry's not here to talk for himself. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm assuming that he just views him as a reliever, which is completely reasonable. A lot of people do. For me, it's I see the exact same stuff as his brother Kyson Witherspoon, who was a first rounder. It's a upper 90s fastball. He's touched 100. It's a pretty nasty slider, a pretty good curveball. He didn't throw his changeup much in college because his coach was calling all the pitches. And he just feels like a guy that in pro ball, the pure arm talent is really rare, especially for the Tiger system. They don't have anybody who throws like this. I mean, it's probably like Troy Melton is the closest comparison in terms of like velocity and stuff. And so, I'm just kind of banking on the pro development to be able to get the most out of him. And if it doesn't, he's still got a chance to be a pretty good reliever. So I had him in the top 20, but I'm sure Jerry will speak for himself at some point.
Yeah. And it's funny, you, Colin, and I all had him at 13.
Yeah. It feels about right. Like, I mean, you can see from our list, things get kind of funky from 5 on, but I think we all have a general idea of like the top 20-ish players in the system. So it's kind of funny with the way it gets, shuffled a bit. But and you got Jake Miller there at 13, who we thought might have come up and helped the big league team last year if he hadn't been hurt. Looked like he had double hip issues and back issues. Just a rough year for him. But when he's on, he looks like a kind of got like an invisible fastball from the left side and a solid slider and a decent changeup. That I think he can probably fit a role as a lefty reliever and maybe a fifth starter down the road.
Yeah, and I think he'll be, and he was added to the 40-man roster as well. And I think we'll see him at some point in the big leagues this year. In 2026, Alveto comes in at number 6 for Joe. Still need to see how that's going to work. I mean, and when we were talking to Carlos from Baseball America, they even had some questions about him as well.
Yeah, I mean, he was just a real late kind of pop up guy who had an awesome performance in one of the like Jupiter or something like that, one of the World Wood Bet leagues down in Florida, and he's got a beautiful looking swing. When you see it, you go, "Oh yeah, that'll work." But it's just we're using kind of our institutional knowledge here, where this is a high school catcher, which is always fraught, and a high school catcher from New York, so he's seen very little advanced competition. Now maybe the Tigers just absolutely nailed this one, and it's entirely possible. But just the history tells us that the players like this take a long time and do tend to flame out at a pretty high rate. So we're just hedging our bets a little bit, and maybe he'll come out and rake next year, and he could easily work his way into the top 10, if not top 5, if he's really doing well.
And I know, so Rodriguez and Salcedo kind of rounded out, and I think the rest of the list we've talked about quite a bit of, but the one guy I want to talk about the most in the last top 10 or the last final 10 through 1 is Andrew Sears. Now, Andrew Sears does not come up high on a lot of other lists, and he is a top 5 in our system. And I think that's deserved, because here's the thing about Andrew Sears last year. I mean, in addition to, you and I joke about that, Emily told us too, he doesn't really like, doesn't like being interviewed. He's kind of for those who watch hockey, he reminds me of a goalie. Goalies are neurotic. That's what they are. The goalies are just simply neurotic. And he's an intense guy. And I was worried, well, let's see how he does in Erie. And there were some starts where he looked really, really good. And then some starts where he looked just kind of like, it was adjustment, because as we've talked about this numerous times, AA strike zone blows. Just, it simply is, it sucks. There's no other way to say it. It doesn't have the same, what you see in Toledo or Lakeland, where you have the challenge system and everything. And AA strike zone, it's inconsistent. So that being said, he came through and pitched a hell of a postseason, had a really good run in the postseason, and was able to really, in a game against, look, Binghamton's got some really good prospects. Binghamton and Altoona both. He was able to hold his own. And he's a guy who just came up for, I think it was like just in the middle, late August, early September for Erie. Don't judge the box score numbers deceive you there, because I thought in the postseason he did a really good job. Showed a lot of balls, really, and he was a guy who can really mix up his pitches. His command's really good, and I don't know. I think Sears is a guy to really. I think you're going to see in the Tigers uniform. To me, I'm gonna say this, either late this year or next year.
Yeah, but there's a lot of kind of Brant Herter to him, although I think he's got a slightly better chance than Herter to start. I do think that ultimately his best role might be as that lefty reliever, just because he absolutely shuts down lefties. But yeah, and it's interesting. It's just like, you see that the three of us, me, you, and Joe, have him at the bottom of the top 10 or just outside of it, but he's got 2 top 6 votes. And just the way that our system works and the way things get funky after the top 4, he ended up as the 5th highest ranked. And like you said, you're not going to see him that high anywhere else. But he does, among pitchers in the system in the high minors, he's got the best chance to come up and help next year. I think as a starter, it's him and Joe Miller, really, or Jake Miller. And Jake Miller, it's tough to count on him because he was hurt. But yeah, I mean, it's a lefty with a low slot, mid-90s fastball, really good sweeper that if he keeps it out of the center of the zone. Sorry, Alton. And yeah, he's working on this, like the splitter. And I think that's going to be a huge development for him next year. He's going to have to continue to give himself another weapon to get righties out. But and as you said, I think the thing that most impressed me about Sears is just how much of a battler he is. Like in that championship game, I think the game 3, he gave up 2 runs. Maybe it was game 2. I don't remember which one he pitched. But he gave up 2 runs in the first, and it was like it looked dangerous. And then he just completely settled down. I want to say he got 13, 14 guys out in a row, and then they brought him out for the sixth. And I think the first pitch he threw was an opposite field home run, and that was it for him for the day. But he really kept them in it and allowed the Seawolves to get back into the game, and then the bullpen kind of fell apart a little bit. But yeah, he's a potential innings eater, like number 4, number 5 starter, or a really dynamic shutdown lefty reliever. So I think that's why he's ranked that high. We have Salcedo 10. You touched on him a little bit earlier, but it wasn't just his performance last year. It was just the way his stuff looked. It's fastball 96, 97, fastball and a sinker, nasty splitter, really good breaking ball, and throwing a ton of strikes. The only question with him is he's a big dude and he's pretty young, and you worry that he's going to get too big and is just going to have to be a reliever. But he seemed to hold his velocity last year, and hitters could do nothing against him. So I would expect him to be in West Michigan to begin the year. And he's the sort of guy who could theoretically move quickly if they let him, right? Just because the pure stuff is it's like number 3, number 4 starter pure stuff. And it's just a matter of getting them the innings and the experience.
Yeah, and you hope too that doesn't what happened to Rainer Castillo happens to Salcedo at West Michigan. And if you that's going to be, I think, if we watch his first 10 starts at West Michigan, if he can get over the hump like that, that will bode well for the Tigers, because the Tigers, in terms of international starters, Montero's a breakthrough. But I'd love to see a guy like Salcedo also break through as well. Now, before we get to Montilla, Montilla was injured last year, so we're still really high on him. People know about that. Lozano fell back a little bit on a lot of people's list because his numbers last year wasn't healthy. He didn't catch really the second half of the season. And so there's some concerns there. A lot of people are really willing to give up on him. There's one certain person on X, I'm not going to say his name, who always hates on him. But then I went through, you know exactly what I'm talking about, Chris.
Yeah.
He went through a lot last year. I believe his father, there were some issues with his father passing away. Maybe, I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but the guy went through a lot last year. And so I'm gonna give him a pass on that.
And we've learned our lesson on this multiple times about what happens to catchers when they get to Double-A. This is
the Dingler. We call this the Dingler effect.
Yeah, same thing happened to Jake Rogers when he got to Double-A. It's just a big leap, particularly if you're catching. And Lorenzo does have a lot of scary weaknesses in his game, but I do think he has the tools to. I don't know why I put the emphasis on the. He has the tools to be a catcher. It's a strong arm. I think he can catch if he puts his mind to it and keeps at it. He's not going to be the most agile guy, and pitch framing and all that stuff. But I think he can do it. And then he's got this tremendous raw power from both sides of the plate. Like it's 70 grade, 80 grade power, and you don't give up on guys like that. Like if he goes out and hits hits 200 again next year with a 30+% strikeout rate, then I'm going to drop him a lot. But he's still relatively young. They added him to the 40-man because of that upside. And like you said, there were other things going on last year. He was, dealing with some injuries, dealing with some personal stuff. We've seen him be a real dynamic hitter. He's got some stuff to work on, but I couldn't drop him much more. And more than that, I couldn't put other people ahead of him just because of that bad. The top 4 is pretty strong, and then after that, it's a toss-up, right? And so I just felt like he's the guy with the most upside after that.
Yeah.
Now, if we want to talk about Montilla, I can tell you what I like about him the most is first of all, he's a legitimate shortstop. No doubt, could play the position defensively. His range, can make spectacular plays, has a strong arm. So I'm not worried about that. He's a legit shortstop, which is a great place to start. And then, he's a switch hitter with some feel to hit from both sides of the plate. It's at times his barrel gets a little loose and it looks like he's got kind of a groove swing, but he does get the bat on the ball a lot. He doesn't swing and miss a ton, and he's a plus runner, super aggressive and exciting on the base paths too. That's the thing I think we talk about the most, is just how electric he is out there. He's putting pressure on the defense at all times, running the bases, and just a real team leader type. And I think sort of those intangibles to go along with good tools. He may not be a super fast mover. I think there's a little bit of Winsel Perez to him. It might take him a little while to particularly to tap into his power, which is in there, but he's got to get to it more. But I just think that he's got one of the higher upsides again. And when you're into the top 10, I kind of look at upside as much as certainty. So that's why I like him.
A lot of what you said I agree with, but one thing that I think stands out about it too is high baseball IQ for his age. I mean, I think that the reason why he stands out to me is that he makes like when how aggressive you talk about his ability to be aggressive on the baseball on the baseball path when he's out there on hitting. Like he's a really aggressive, but that comes with having a good baseball IQ. He's aware of everything that's going on, taking that extra base. He knows when to do it. It does look like comical sometimes because it looks like he's not sure what to do in a sense because what was that game where he went to first to third?
Yeah, I mean, he almost got picked off at first, but he did a swim tag and got in safe, and then he ran to second, and the throw was in the outfield, and then he ran to third and did and just beat the throw there. It was clapping, and then there was I think a throw to another play where he had to swim tag, and it was just like he's just out there going crazy, and yeah, it's just a lot of fun player to watch, and it's a bummer that I think he tore his knee ligament, which you hope that doesn't affect his athleticism and speed too much. You always worry a little bit about that, but hopefully he'll come back in the middle of next year at least and be healthy.
Yeah, the athleticism there, that's another good word. That's what I like about him too. His ability, his size. Like most of the Tiger prospects that were coming internationally were just skinny, raw kids, and this kid looked like he was already kind of like Christian Santana, just muscled up, not muscled up, but just agile enough to play. And the fact that he was going to second with, at the time, Bryce Rayner playing short, I don't know, his field, he could possibly, I think he could play third. I think he has arm.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's got the arm for third. He's going to be able to play anywhere in the infield that you need him, and probably athletic enough to play center field with no issue. Like, I don't know. I have a pretty good feeling about his ceiling, and it's a pretty high floor too because of that athleticism and defense. And you just hope that the hit tool can come along. And it's occurred to me that people are just listening to this. I don't know if we've announced where these players are ranked. So we had Montilla 8th. Hayuli is 7th. We've talked about him a lot. He had a down year, but we're still kind of believing in the hitting ability, and he's still relatively young for a guy in AAA Toledo. It's a big year for him, and I think we will see him in the big leagues at some point, but needs to make some adjustments, particularly against fastballs and pulling the ball in the air.
Yeah, I mean that's really where, as far as like the only thing about Montilla too, you want to hopefully see is how that knee injury will affect his ability to plant. Does he start hitting for more power now too? Like, could that be something like you're talking about hitting the ball in the air more, Chris?
For Lee?
I'm sorry for I'll come back to Montilla for just about his ability to if that's going to change his swing mechanics at all or anything too. You know what I mean? Like just adjusting to that. So
yeah, I mean, all injuries you're always worried that it's going to affect the player, but hopefully not. Hopefully it was a relatively normal, as it were, knee injury, and he can come back.
And then Lee, as far as Lee goes too, Griffin kind of addressed this a little bit about the now. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I mean Griff said if McGonigal is who he is and Rayner keeps moving at shortstop, can Montilla be a trade chip? And I think that applies to Anderson and Lee and all those guys, right? Like, I would think that Montilla would be a pretty good trade chip at some point if he continues to prove that he can play shortstop, because that was that's the issue with Lee and Anderson. If they can't play shortstop, if they could, they'd be awesome trade chips. But as it were, as it is, they're kind of second basemen who are stretched at third base. But yeah.
Yeah, and I see them like trading. If they end up doing like a trade like that, they might trade a guy like Peck or somebody like that. Because
we didn't even talk about John Peck, but yeah, that's a good call. He's a Peck does a little bit of everything well. Hits the ball hard, good arm, good speed. Can play shortstop, third, second base. Just it might be a little bit too aggressive and a little bit too much swing and miss in the zone.
I mean, Jim Jarvis got traded as an example. Jim Jarvis got traded, and so maybe a guy like Woody Hayden too. Like, there's other guys that other teams might love to see. For example, Hayden did a really good job playing center field last year when Jackson Strong missed time due to concussion protocol. So there's so many other ways that can go about that. I think Montilla, to them, I wouldn't necessarily trade him unless there's like a sure way the Tigers have a future shortstop. But I like to see what Montilla can do at third base too. So I'm going to stick with that and wait to see, because I think there's other guys that are more polished that would give. For example, is Jim Driver's going to be a major league player? No, but it gives the Braves another veteran bat in the minor leagues. So who knows?
Also, trading prospects is a theoretical exercise for the Tigers. They have not traded anybody who's like highly regarded at all yet. So
yeah,
and we have to wait to see it until we believe it, as it were.
Yeah, I mean,
Josh, when I see it.
Yeah, when they traded Josh Randall, for example, Randall wasn't really highly regarded on.
Yeah, I mean, they traded Randall, Sales, Ashman, and like you said, Jarvis last year. None of those guys were
Although Ashman, I think Ashman's going to come back to bite him a little bit. That's what I think.
I mean, I think he'll be a big leaguer, but it's still a lefty reliever. I don't think he's going to be a closer or anything like that. But
that's true. No, that's true.
And then we've got Jordan Yost, their first round pick. This is a speculative one. We've seen him swing a little bit. It's a pretty looking swing. He needs to gain some power. His brother is a little bit bigger than him. His brother's at Florida, so that's you can kind of dream on getting a little bit bigger. But they love his hitting ability and his on base ability, and is another guy who could probably play shortstop. So again, we'll see it. It'll be an interesting year to watch him for sure.
Every time that I hear the word Untouchables, I think of Lunchables.
Delicious.
Yeah, they're very delicious. But the reason why the top four is pretty, all of us across the board. This is where it's like unity at its finest right here. We're all on the same page with this. And you can probably see the top four was probably uniform across every single prospect list.
Yeah, and to be clear, we make these prospect lists independent of one another. We don't show anybody these until we actually have the full list. So we all came to this top four independently. And as you said, I think everybody who does will. I mean, Briseño has a lot of hitting ability and power, but we know that he's probably relegated to first base. He played a lot of catcher last year. The Tigers have not given up on that yet. It's possible, but he struggled a lot when he got to Double-A. And I think part of that is catching so much more, and part of that is playing a long season, and part of that is he doesn't have sort of elite bat speed, so he's going to have to cheat a little bit to get to velocity. And what happened was he just kind of took a lot more strikes last year, like he was just guessing and just wasn't ready to swing. But young player in Double-A, not worried about him. I think he's got a chance to be a really good power hit guy, but probably at first base. So is it enough to make him a big leaguer? Probably. I don't know if he's going to be a regular, though, unless he gets to all of it. Rayner looked awesome in his awesome. I don't know why I choked on my word right there, but Rayner looked absolutely awesome in his limited sample. It's a real bummer that he hurt his shoulder, and we really hope that the shoulder strength comes back, because his arm was really fun to watch. Just an absolute cannon. Hits the ball really hard. A lot to like there. Just, had he played the full season, he might be a top 10 prospect in baseball.
Oh, no doubt. I no doubt. I think he would have been at West Michigan at the last month of the season too. He was really starting to hit a groove before he got injured there, and it's really unfortunate that happened, and it was the same injury that happened to Cole Keefe, except Rayner had surgery where Cole Keefe did not. So that's the big difference right there. Briseño, get back to Briseño for a second. The one thing that he was catching every day for a while, and that did take a toll. You were mentioning it earlier. The guessing part, you could tell the reason why the fatigue thing came into play is some of his bats in the postseason, he had a lot of long at bats, he was fouling off. And I think that had he had been doing what they're doing, splitting the catch dues between him, Alfonso, and Tyron, I think those pitches that would have been fouls would have been home runs, because when he did make some good, he made some good contact in that last month of the season. But it's just you're also correct me if I'm wrong, Chris. They were, I think, didn't they tell us they were calling their own game? He was calling more games too, right? They were calling all their own games. That wasn't getting.
I think so, yeah. But I want to say that did he catch? He caught in the postseason because he had some.
He was the only catcher. Yeah, he was the only one that was catching.
Yeah, and then he had this random string of pass balls all of a sudden, a bunch of pass balls in the postseason that he actually didn't have an issue with that for the most part during the regular season. It was just popped up at the worst time. There's a lot to work on as a catcher if he wants to stick there, and it's a really hard position. And obviously, if he can stick a catcher and hit, that would be ideal, right? If you've got Dingler as your everyday catcher who's a right-handed hitter, and you can have a backup in Briseño who catches 40, 50 games a year, and is also playing some first base and gives you left-handed thump, that would be ideal. And I think that's possible, but he's got a long way to go to be trusted at that level defensively.
Yeah. I think he's going to be a guy, no matter where he's going to end up playing or his position wise, he's going to be a major league contributor. It's just a matter of where is the question.
Yeah. And then you got Max Clark and Kevin McGonigal, two of the top 10 prospects in baseball, certainly top 20 prospects in baseball. McGonigal, I don't know what else we can say about him. He was our number one prospect heading into the year, and all he did was go out and hit for more power, play solid shortstop. He's not an elite athlete and doesn't have a ton of range, but he's got, everything else you need to be, to survive at shortstop. I think his hands are fine. He's got a good internal clock. His arm is, adequate. Ideally he's not the best shortstop on your roster, but I think he could come in and play shortstop at least to a Trey Sweeney level next year if they need him to. And then, it's just the combination of pure hitting ability, patience. His swing decisions are just elite, and power. They're. I pointed out in the hit tool piece, I think. I'll mention it again. He hit 305 last year, I think, with like a 280 ISO and like a 1.4 walk to strikeout ratio, something like that. Nobody in minor league baseball has done that over the last 30 years. It's an insane mix of contact power and patience, and just a matter of making sure he's ready for the big leagues. And if he comes out and has a monster spring, I can imagine AJ Hinch really pushing hard to have him on an opening day roster, because he's, by the end of the year, certainly he's going to be one of the 3 or 4 best hitters in the Tigers lineup. And Max Clark could be the same way. Max Clark, he has plus bat to ball ability himself, and is very, very patient. He looks like kind of an ideal leadoff hitter down the road. Like, the patience is almost to a fault at this point, where he's almost passive at times, but he walked 94 times last year. He struck out 90 times. That was because he just didn't swing a lot. But he has, like we said, he has really good back to ball skills. He sprays the ball over the park. All we wanted to see from him a little bit was more pull power, pulling the ball in the air a little bit more. And he really did start to do that down toward the end stretch of the season. He told us himself that he thought he did that a little too much. He needs to find the happy medium. And the thing about him, and hopefully it came across when we interviewed him, but it certainly comes across when you talk to him, is that he is going to get every ounce of his ability. Like, he works his ass off, and he loves baseball to a degree that I don't know how many people could relate to. So he's a guy that I'm almost positive is going to reach his ceiling, which I think is probably an all-star level player, possibly center field, possibly left field. But another, leadoff hitter, down the road, you could have Clark batting leadoff, McGonigal batting second, and then, Green, Torkelson, Carpenter batting behind them with Keith. And it's a pretty fun top 5, 6 in the lineup.
Yeah. And then Briseño maybe a year later coming in and doing his thing. We'll see. And look, here's the thing about the Tiger system as we end the podcast here. It is as deep as it's been long. And it was something that Carlos, I was worried about, like the pitching side of things, but Carlos mentioned this. You can get hitters, you can get pitchers easily by training your hitters. And the Tiger, this is as deep as far as hitters go, potential hitters they've had in quite some time. And so that should be encouraging for Tiger fans, number one. I know a lot of fans are impatient about this, and the Tigers have made a lack of big move. And I get it. I understand that. And they do need another right-handed bat. And Clark does have the it factor. Absolutely, Griff. I think
McGonigal.
So McGonigal. Yeah. They both have the cojones to play at the next big league, at the big league level. That being said, the only thing that is concerning is the pitching thing, but I think the Tigers are addressing it their own unique way. It is the logjam of infielders is a problem the Tigers never had. Let's face it. So, as far as like when they were talking about historically speaking, like with Ben Badler and all these guys were talking about historically speaking, they weren't exaggerating. They were not exaggerating this because, guys, as long as we've been doing this, but even as a fan, like going back, you and I in the night, I mean, I know like baseball wise, both of us were in our own unique way in different things in the 90s, but looking back when you started originally at Tigstown, Chris, I mean, I was going to ask you this. I wanted to save this question for tonight. Can you remember, and you were around during the Danny Worth days. We're talking like Cale Org, like the start of the, in the days of the chat boards, what have you. Have you ever seen a system in terms of infielders and just our top 10 right now? Not our top 10, but generally speaking, have you ever seen the Tigers system this deep?
Absolutely not. No, I mean, other than last year. No, like this is by far the best. I really started following the Tiger system a lot around 2004, I want to say. And they had some nice systems in that like 3-4 year range, when they had Andrew Miller and Cameron Maben and then Porcello and Verlander and Granderson and Zuaya had come up. Like it was like, that was really nice, but they've never had this level of, they've never had a hitter ranked as highly as McGonigal, I think. I mean, Riley Green's probably the closest, and I don't know if he was ever even like number 2. And then Clark is like right behind him. Like if it was just Max Clark, I think everybody would be super excited about the system, but they have McGonigal and Clark. And I get you, like, I understand Tigers fans want more, and they should, right? Like this is a team that's made the playoffs twice. They should want the team to add from outside, get more bats. And in addition to from within, they can do both. You can. But I do think people need to realize that like, yeah, Clark and McGonigal are coming soon. And these are going to be 2 of your best hitters soon. And that's going to make a big difference. It's just a matter of, is it opening day? Is it opening day 2027? Is it August? Is it July? They're getting help from within very soon. And there's not been many times where you can say that. Like, you have to, I mean, you can go back to the Green and Torkelson year and Colt Keith a little bit. But this is, they're going to get some big time help from within. And beyond that, like, I understand we talk a lot about the Tigers, but we're focusing on the minor league system, and it's going to be another really exciting year in the minors. I'm very eager to see what happens in Erie because that's a huge amount of turnover there. And just to see, Rayner come back and Mattia come back and healthy and see if any of these young pitchers can take a step forward. And we know we do this every year. There are a handful of guys who just kind of fall off, and it's a real bummer. And there are always a handful of guys who come from nowhere or really take huge leaps forward. And it's really hard to pick which one is going to do which, but it's always exciting to watch. And hopefully people will hang out with us and watch as we discuss it.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to everybody coming, our normal people on Patreon. And I want to thank everybody on Discord, Patreon. Thank Mr. the Colossus again this year for always kind of checking in and making sure we're okay. And we're always keeping the memory alive about John. And of course we always will. But it's as far as this year goes, this has been a brutal year. Like as far as like us personally, both of us have been, like I said, a transitional year, if you will. And I've been looking forward to 2026 for a long time. And just with my wife beating cancer, which is good news. So she's got to keep checking in.
News, yeah. Outstanding news. I don't know how much you've made that public or how much you want to, but yeah, it's like you said, real rough year for you guys over there, and hopefully things are continuing to look up.
Yeah, and the house has been finally we got the house done. Like we had a pipe burst that broke last year around the same time, and then it just continued to be a pain in the ass all year long. But you know what? It's okay, and here we are, and that's all you can ask for. So enjoy the rest of your evening as it goes towards midnight, and I'm off the rest of the week, so it's gonna be nice and actually get to. I took advantage of my 90 days by putting my first day off request in, and I was like, I'm not working Friday. I'm not working Friday. Screw that.
Yeah, no, I will, and I will say, like you said, it's a transitional year, but also some interesting things happen. We both got new jobs, but also, and I want to give you credit, and hopefully people know this already, but if not, go read your stuff at Roundtable.
Yes,
you added another baseball job, and you've been crushing it, putting out an article a day at least, and so it's a lot of work, and your voice is important, I think, in this environment, in this what do you call it, media landscape, and I hope people check it out. And then I got invited to do another podcast, the Free Press podcast, which has been interesting. It's fun, talking to an actual beat writer, and it's a different dynamic than what we have. I've talked about it. You and I are much more conversational, and Evan and I just kind of make our points and kind of talk at each other. But hopefully people dig it. And so yeah, upward and onward. Next year, we're going to keep covering the minors and the big leagues, and hopefully we'll have some championships to cover again.
Yeah, hopefully they'll be nice. I mean, we barely scratched the surface about West Michigan. They've done really, yeah, and Matt with more Chris, less Evan. The reviews on Chris coming out of the podcast have been favorable.
I appreciate that. Evan is being a beat writer is hard, and it's a lot of work, and I think he does a good job.
Yeah.
But Evan's, if you want more of me on podcasts, you can find more of me. I'm on like 2 other podcasts, right? You could,
yeah,
this podcast with Raj, and also Motor City Metrics, which we're continue doing on Thursdays, and yeah, hopefully we can get down to spring training and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Chris is doing a really hell of a job with that stuff, and just we're going to be retooling things a little bit on the Tiger Minor League report a little bit. We're going to be at it. Like I said, there's going to be some new stuff in 2026, but we have to, I'm working on logistics. Brandon will be back as well. I know there's some people who don't like Mark Gurash, but people like Mark. There's some people also like Mark. But there's going to be some things with that, but that's going to be a separate thing itself. But I know people hate listening, Mark, but at any rate, whatever. We'll talk about that a little later. But
Mark is an acquired taste, and he's going to have his own, outlet, right? And you don't have to listen to it if you don't want to.
Yeah, exactly. So we appreciate everybody tuning in, and like I said, the GoFundMe will be out probably the next week or two, as we look to try to get some extra money to go out to Lakeland. That'd be, again, if you have Chris. I hope you get to go to spring training. I really do, because
I should be able to, and I've been flying enough for work, so I might be able to use some airline points too. So we'll see. Yeah, although I don't know if they carry over from year to year.
Yeah, and I got to talk to Sherry, and maybe you can stay over with Sherry and over in Lakeland, because that would be. She lives about 10 minutes away from that, and so
that would be helpful. Yes.
No, that's very, very, very helpful. So for myself, guy over at Motor City Metrics, Mike, Uper, and everybody on our entire staff, thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next year. Is that stupid dad joke that it never ceases to amaze me how cliche that is. Say it, Kloss, everybody, and we will talk to you soon. Hopefully the Tigers will continue to make some sort of moves, but we'll let you know, and we'll keep you posted. Thanks, everybody, and have a good night.
New Year.
Happy New Year.
Classy.
Keep it classy.